Thank you to Nicholas and Capital Link for another wonderful organization of the conference today. I'm delighted to be moderating this panel around moving the industry forwards. And I was thinking, coming today, we're actually in February, beginning of the second month of 2026, and the maritime sector is operating under conditions where we have political tension, security risks, and economic realignment that are no longer just background factors, but they're actually key factors that are shaping some of the trade flows. We started the year with obviously the subject of Venezuela dominating the scene, a number of discussions taking place around the Venezuela and how some of the reshaping on the trade flows is taking place. We also have the shadow fleet of tankers that is broadening. Approximately 1,500 tankers being now part of the shadow fleet. And of course, the age of them is quite old. We're talking about a large number of them being more than 20 years old. And at the same time, we have the Red Sea tensions continuing to result in extending journeys, potentially skewing also the capacity demand. So amongst this backdrop of geopolitical change, we're seeing global shipping being shaped by one of the most complex geopolitical landscapes in the decades. We'll explore a bit more around these subjects during our panel, and we will also take a look in terms of how this geopolitical risk is influencing fleet deployment, how companies are building resilience into their networks, and which will be the strategic choices that will actually define the next decade. From a markets perspective, what was the characteristics of the first month, January 2026? We've seen a significant new building ordering activity, more than 150 vessels being ordered within just the first month of 2026, strong appetite in the tankers and the gas segment ordering activity. We've seen VLCC rates surging at really, really high levels. And as I said, we're just at the end of the first month, the beginning of the second month of the year. So what will the year ahead of us have in store? We'll now unpack some of these subjects with our distinguished guests in this panel. I'm joined by four distinguished guests. John Xylas, Chairman of INTERCARGO and President and CEO of Ariston Navigation, and member of the Board Union of Greek Shipowners. Next, Claes Berglund, Vice Chair, International Chamber of Shipping and Senior Director at Stena. Rolf Westfal-Larsen, Chairman of INTERTANKO and Chief Executive Officer of Westfal-Larsen Management. And Paul Pathy, President of BIMCO and President and CEO of Fednav. Welcome to you all. So I guess I'll start with the first question around, with the background that I said before and the geopolitical landscape and the market patterns that we have, where do you see the biggest threats and the biggest opportunities for the shipping industry in the current year?
Thank you, Anthi, and thank you very much for inviting me in this panel. I believe that over the next year, the key question obviously is uncertainty. We continue to operate in a world of exceptional uncertainty, and that uncertainty in itself is both a threat and an opportunity. On the threat side, obviously, you also mentioned geopolitics, trade tensions, and the risk of an economic slowdown remains as a key concern because they affect trade flows, they affect investment decisions, we heard it also in the previous panel, and they affect confidence. So at the same time, we have entering a new regulatory era, especially on the environmental policy, with increasingly regional approaches, something that unfortunately started here in Europe. The risk of fragmenting what is by nature a global industry. Decarbonization obviously will remain the dominant strategic challenge, the industry is fully committed to reducing our environmental footprint, but the pathway must be realistic and technically achievable, which unfortunately is not the case today. So we heard also in the previous panel, the alternative fuels are not available yet, and they're not available globally. They're not in sufficient quantities, they're not in affordable costs, and they're not with any proven safety. That creates a real risk, and well-intentioned investments could become stranded assets if regulation moves faster than technology. So that said, the transition also presents opportunities. I would say that innovation in energy efficiency, digitalization, and operational optimization are areas that can deliver immediate gains. AI, obviously, and data-driven shipping can improve fuel consumption, can improve safety, voyage planning, while new vessel designs and carbon reduction technologies can provide competitive advantages for early movers. So I would say that the greatest opportunity is to modernize our industry technologically and operationally, while the greatest threat is pursuing decarbonization through unrealistic frameworks that undermine the competitiveness of shipping and ultimately global trade.
Thank you, Yanni. Claes, your views?
Thank you so much, Kalimera. Nice to be here. I was also very impressed by the previous panel. But let's go back to geopolitics, which I think was the question now. It's without doubt that shipping has been drawn into geopolitics. It's nothing really we asked for, but it has happened. And it currently affects our industry in many ways. First of all, I would say operationally, our ships are affected directly what's going on in the world at the moment. Our seafarers are not as safe as they used to be due to external threats, for example, and we also need to take other routes around the world only due to politics. But also commercially, we see the rise of tariffs and barriers for trade that we have not seen before as a result of the geopolitical tension. Also, increased protectionism. Clearly now, we're starting to kind of, the globalization is going a bit backwards, and then I'm perhaps preferring or looking more at the supplier side of things. We are expected to source ships, for example, more locally than we are used to do, etc. So the protectionism is also actually something I think that's harming our industry currently. But maybe perhaps most of all, what concerns us in the industry most at the moment is the erosion of the rule-based order, which has served us so well for many, many years. And it's been the foundation for the industry to prosper and to serve the world with efficient and sustainable transports. If we cannot agree on the rules that we are trading, that will severely harm our ability to trade and to serve the world as we have done. So that is perhaps my biggest concern at the moment. We would obviously prefer to stay out of all this and just continue to trade and serve the world as we have done for so many years. But now, at the current state, it seems a bit impossible to do that. So we have to stay on. We have to react to this new world. And we know that shipping is extremely resilient. We've been around for a couple of thousand years, and I'm sure we will be for another, the coming 1,000 years as well. So we will manage this. But currently, it's a bit too much rock and roll, I would say, for our industry. It's very interesting times, and we should, I'm sure we will embrace this and cope with it. But it's not all positive, I think, for trade and, in the end, for our consumers.
Thank you, Claes. Rolf or Paul, do you want to add your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I very much agree with Claes here. It's the trade, the world trade, breakdown of international world trade regulations, and fragmentation. I think it's the biggest threat that we are facing today. I think we've something like 90% of world trade goes on ships, and the world trade has for decades been a great boost to the growth, the world growth. And I think perhaps the effect of shipping in that has been greatly underestimated. If we now come into a situation that we've seen with rapidly changing rules and unilateral changes of tariffs, port fees, etc., we have seen a lot of friction being introduced into the global logistics system. For us as a shipping industry, we of course we have to cope with this, but on a more global scale, it introduces a lot of cost, higher cost for transportation, higher cost for the final goods that are sold. We have probably driving inflation in the longer run, and potentially also reducing world growth and GDP, which in the end is going to be, I think, very negative for the whole development of the world. So I think I would say that's my biggest threat. Then again, shipping has always been very resilient. We are able to adapt to these changes, but the long-term effects, they will be significant, I think, if we continue down this path. Now, on the positive note, opportunities, I would say I'm personally a technology optimist. There is a tremendous amount of innovation going on now in shipping. We are seeing a lot of new solutions coming out to help reduce emissions, but also in effect increasing the efficiency of ships, the way they are operated, the way they run, different types of fuels, technologies to reduce and improve the speed of ships. So and also even nuclear is being investigated now as a potential new way to drive ships. So I think it'll take some time. It's not going to be here tomorrow, but in the longer run, I think that is going to be something that will give us a much more efficient industry, operationally and technically. So yeah, I think that's my positive note. Thank you.
Thank you for ending on the positive note. And I guess, Paul, your views also on the subject?
Thank you. I don't have a lot to add to the threats. I think they've been very well articulated by the panel. As far as opportunities, certainly I think technology is probably the biggest one, as we look at speed optimization, data harmonization. But my real take on technology being a positive is that, shipping is one of these industries that will never get Kodak'd, if in a certain way, if you know what I mean. If you think about Kodak Film, which was the biggest film company in the world and then kind of disappeared because technology took its place. I think one of the things that we have kind of in our favor in the shipping industry is that, the world relies on shipping now, and the world will rely on shipping in 100 years. We are not going to get displaced by technology. So technology can be very helpful to what we're doing now, make us more efficient, but we can actually rest secure that we're not one of the industries that are going to be pushed away and made to disappear by technology. So it's really working for us, not against us. And this combined thing, I think, is enormous opportunity for our industry.
Thank you, Paul. I'll stay with you and ask you one question around ESG aspects. So BIMCO has long been providing guidance to ship owners on operational and regulatory matters. How is the organization helping its members integrate the ESG principles into their day-to-day operations, so particularly in areas from decarbonization, crew welfare, and corporate governance?
Look, we have a lot of members, of course, as we all do, with a lot of differing views. I think really it's about best practices, right? All we can do is take the things that we think are good for everybody and offer guidance on what those best practices look like. If we can all work together to promote those practices, if we can all work together to make shipping more sustainable for the industry, the old "a rising tide lifts all ships." So we just try to work with our members, provide a level of guidance and unification to try to get everybody on the same page, because again, if we can raise the whole standard, then the industry will be better off.
Yanni, I'll turn to you and ask you a question specifically around the bulk carrier market. With an aging fleet in the bulk carrier segment and the current trends in the new build activity, the ordering activity that we've seen, what should we expect to see from the bulk carrier industry during this year as the emissions regulations tighten?
Yeah, good question. Well, the bulk carrier sector is often described as aging, but the picture is a little bit more complex. In fact, bulk carriers today are significantly more energy efficient than they were in 2008, and total emissions have remained broadly stable despite a very substantial increase in ton miles, which is maybe even 60%. This is a remarkable achievement for the sector, and we don't forget that this is a sector that operates under very competitive markets and transports the building blocks of the global economy. So it is true that the average age has increased a little bit in recent years. However, the fleet condition today is far better than in the past decades. When we look at current ordering trends, most of the new bulk carriers are being built with conventional fuels. That we also heard that in the previous panel. But they're in a much higher energy efficiency level due to the various energy-saving devices, improved hull forms, advanced propellers, and the various digital optimization systems that are installed on board. So also we have a number of first movers. Some of them are members in INTERCARGO that have invested in dual fuel designs and wind-assisted technologies. And obviously their operational experience is going to be very valuable for our members, but also for the broader industry. The challenge, of course, for dry bulk owners is, and especially the Trump operators who are price takers, is going to be able to control and be able to manage that risk, which combined with tightening emissions regulations increases compliant costs. And this is all happening at a time where the fuel pathways remain very uncertain. So what we should expect this year, I would say continued improvement in technical efficiency, more retrofitting, more operational optimization, a cautious investment in new buildings designed mainly for flexibility. But we also have a real risk when you're building today a ship for 25 years and you're caught between shifting regulatory frameworks and immature fuel technologies. That is a risk that every owner is facing today. So yes, we are an industry that we are willing to decarbonize, and that willingness is not questioned. But the sector has already demonstrated strong progress on that. But without fuel availability that can involve in a coordinated and predictable way, we're going to face threats there. So I would say this is what we should expect this year on the dry bulk sector.
Thank you, Yanni. I'll stay on the decarbonization subject and go to you, Rolf, around INTERTANKOs. INTERTANKO has been advocating for transitional pathways to be included in IMO's net zero framework. Can you tell us a bit more the details, in terms of what does this mean? Why is it important for reaching 2050 targets?
Yes, I think I want to just go back to the previous panel, which they covered quite well the availability of new green fuels and the lack thereof. I think we need to realize that these fuels are not here today. They might be there in the future, but we need to decarbonize as much as possible right now. So to achieve this, INTERTANKO is proposing that we look at all the different ways of reducing fuels or reducing emissions today. And we have a toolbox. We need to use every tool in that toolbox that we can to reduce as much as possible. So to that end, we are taking in data from all our members and looking at all the different ways that are used for reducing emissions, be it LNG, biofuels, carbon capture, wind-assisted propulsion, etc. And I think what we try to do is to make specific data points on all these different technologies so that they can be reviewed and to see to what end they can actually, in real-life situations, reduce the emissions. And then we use those data also towards regulators to try to influence their decisions and have something concrete to offer to the table. So this is an important part of our work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rolf. I'll stay with you and move into one of the subjects that is quite, let's say, significantly discussed in our markets, and that is around the shadow fleet. As INTERTANKO has taken a strong public position in terms of the shadow fleet. Can you tell us a bit more what the association is doing about it and elaborate a bit further on the importance of this issue?
Yes, so INTERTANKO was set up specifically for quality ship owners to join and try to become a force to influence the regulations. And recently we have seen the emergence of a large part of the fleet which are completely outside of those international regulations. They operate sometimes even without insurance, quality checks, etc. And we see this as a great risk both to seafarer safety and also potential environmental disasters should these ships have an accident. And what we do as an association, we see this as also as a big threat to the reputation of the tanker industry in general. So we're focusing on low quality substandard ships, and what we do, we try to define exactly what they are, to have a clear definition on these ships, and then we try to promote ways to enforce these regulations, because today a lot of them are sailing this open seas without any challenges. So that's something we try to influence to change so that they can be actually stopped. What we also has done, we have co-sponsored 2 key IMO initiatives. One is a regulatory scoping exercise to develop actions to prevent these unlawful operations of these ships, and that includes the substandard ships. And also a revision of existing mandatory ship reporting schemes around the world and also within European coastal waters. So INTERTANKO has been one of the only industry organizations to support this work within the IMO.
Thank you, Rolf. I'd like to expand our discussion now around our human element, around the maritime workforce, the power of the maritime industry. And we'll move to a question, I guess, both for Claes and Paul. The ICS and BIMCO collaborate on the Seafarer Workforce Report, currently collaborating for the 2026. The last report suggests that approximately 450,000 seafarers will need additional training by 2030. And that number rises up to 800,000 by the mid-2030s. The industry recognizes this, and there is an effort made in terms of increasing talent, increasing the attractiveness of the maritime industry. But is it enough, though, especially as we continue on our decarbonization journey, which will evidently require even further and new skills?
There's an old saying in the sales business that it's a lot easier to sell to a current customer than it is to sell to a new customer. I think that very well applies to the seafarer situation, which is if you want to ensure that you have enough new seafarers, I think you got to also focus on keeping the ones you've got, right? So, these are very resilient, intelligent people that can learn and adapt and so the training itself is not something that worries me because we'll find a way in terms of getting people to learn what they have to learn. But it's really about you have to take care of your seafarers today to encourage future seafarers. So if we take care of them, they will be there for us. And if we can promote safety, security, fair pay, fair practices, treatment for our current seafarers, those seafarers are going to go home and tell their friends and colleagues how great life at sea is, and we won't have a problem recruiting the next generation. But if we don't take good care of our current seafarers, then you're pretty much guaranteed to not have a future generation.
So if I may continue then, so obviously this is, at least as we see it, one of the big challenges we have in the industry is to keep and attract the talents that we need. And we need, of course, skilled personnel on our vessels that eventually, very often, actually go ashore later on and do something good for our industry there, either in the office of shipping companies or in any other capacity. So it's very important that we get the right people from the start on board of the vessels. And challenge connected to this is, of course, that the technical standards and the technical development on board the vessels themselves are developing very quickly at this stage. And the future fuels is one part of this, but it's also the rest of the digitalization on board. AI is entering our space, and all this so we have to reskill also the people we have on board. And we also have to change the conventions that governs who's allowed to do service on board. So that is why we are supporting IMO with the STCW convention very strongly and giving as much input as we can to get that revision right, so it's future-proof for the future. And IMO then, sometimes we tend only to add more regulations to the, and STCW is a part of, could be this example. So we are also urging IMO to actually take away requirements that are not needed anymore. So the balance there to kind of future-proof the competences that we need and will have on board. I also would like to highlight it's been mentioned here before a little bit, but the new circumstances that are on board the vessels. And we had them a couple of 100 years ago when you were attacked by pirates. And now the seafarers are in clear and present danger very often when they are serving on our vessels. And imagine yourself, I mean, most of us sits in offices every day. What happens if somebody starts to throw rockets in your office or kidnap you or half of your department and keep you away for months somewhere? I mean, this is totally unacceptable and something I think that we need to respond to much stronger than we have. To safeguard our sailors on board, that is our priority one, I think, for the whole industry, and this is something we need to work much more on. I think that's important to be said, and it's also, of course, affecting our ability to attract talents. I mean, who wants to be away for months and then maybe not come back? So that's, I think, a serious issue that we need to talk more about. Thank you.
Yanni, anything you would like to add in terms of the maritime workforce and the training and the upskilling that will be required, but also around digitalization and the bulk carrier industry? How has the bulk carrier industry been embracing digitalization?
Right. On the question of how we can attract new people, obviously this is an area that the whole industry has to work. Dry bulk is no exception there. We have to be able to retrain our people, keep them, and obviously retention, training, and continuous upskilling of seafarers is very important, especially when this has become a really strategic issue, not an operational one. So companies today are facing an unprecedented regulatory and information burden. Rules are now set by multiple layers of stakeholders, regional, global, national, charters, not to mention a situation where we have private vetting companies that are have become de facto shipping policemen and are determining which vessels remain in the supply chain. All that adds pressure to our seamen on board. So what we, at least in INTERCARGO, trying to do is to help our members manage all this information overload, which eventually ends up on board the vessels, through our various working panels and trying to disseminate this information around our members. On your question with digitalization, obviously the dry bulk sector has always been driven by efficiency, and digitalization is a natural continuation of that tradition. Many of our members in INTERCARGO have diversified fleets, so they own bulk carriers, tankers, LNG carriers, etc., and this allows them to transfer in-house knowledge and digital solutions across different segments. And this know-how is often shared also through our working groups and panels in INTERCARGO. So I would say that AI and digitalization AI is helping in three main areas today. The one is operational. We mentioned earlier about communication, safety, security, weather routing, voyage and speed optimization, fuel emissions monitoring. The second, I would say, is commercial, because today we can have access to real-time data on both freight rates and futures, port congestion, weather and vessel performance. We can see where ships are going to be in the future and respond faster to changing conditions and operations. And of course, another important driver is regulation compliance, where digitalization is helping. We have today extreme regulation, I would say over-regulation, and this growing number of environmental and operational requirements has made digital systems essential for monitoring, reporting, and compliance. So in that sense, digitalization is not just a productivity tool, it's also a compliance enabler. We have to, of course, not forget that digitalization and AI comes with risks, and the risks are cyber attacks. So one has to always make sure that we have a robust cybersecurity on board, and our people are trained for that as well.
Thank you, Yanni. Nicholas here.
Anthi, if you forgive me for coming in with a surprise question, I wanted to ask you, if you allow me, Anthi.
Yeah, of course.
The four of you, you represent the four major industry organizations. Also, each one of you is a major ship owner, so you know the industry from within the trenches. So if you allow me, I have two questions for you. How do you work together to coordinate topics and to advance the industry? And how do you try to have an input into policy making when it comes to IMO, the European Union, and so on? So these two questions: how do you work together? I know you have a roundtable happening from time to time. And how do you try to have an input into policy making, which at the end of the day is a huge topic because that affects the industry? So forgive me for surprising you with this question, but I think that's one of the reasons we love having you here. You are the heads of these major organizations, and we all look up to you for leadership.
Thank you. If I may respond to that questions about how we are, from the industry side, organizing ourselves, which is a very interesting question, by the way, and I'm trying not to be too technical about this, but the basis for how we organized are in two pathways. The first are the national shipowners associations. So they are the foundation. We're all members, or most of us are members of any or maybe more national ship-owning associations, like UGS, for example, here. And those associations have then together decided that to influence, for example, in Brussels, it's much more clever that we have something called EXA in Brussels that will talk for us instead of each and everyone going there by ourselves. So that is why we have European Shipowner Association, and there is a similar association in Asia. And then on the global level, we have the International Chamber of Shipping, which then coordinates all these national associations, all the member associations, And the main speaking partner for ICS is obviously IMO. So we are trying to represent all the national associations and their members, which are the ship owners, vis-à-vis IMO then from the industry. Then we have the direct entry organizations, which are INTERCARGO, INTERTANKO, BIMCO, etc., who are created for their special sector and taking special care of their sectors. And BIMCO, of course, is another beast, you can say, that is absolutely needed for the industry, doing a very important work when it comes to, for example, documents and so on, and is also supporting on the regulatory side. So I don't know, is that a... And there are, of course, some other associations than these we see. We have also CLIA, obviously, World Shipping Council for the containers, Interferry, which is close to my heart, and I'm sure there are others that are not mentioned here today. And then we try to talk to each other as much as we can, but we are not always, organized and have exactly the same view on everything, but I think most of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, we actually think and view things exactly the same. I don't know if anyone else wants to supplement.
I can't say it any better than that, but what really happens is we have secret meetings where we decide everything for global shipping. But
yeah, just to add, there is a lot of coordination going on between the associations represented here, and of course also on a regular basis we have interactions with regulators in Europe and also other jurisdictions around the world. So I mean, that's one of the main parts of our contribution to our members, is to have that hands-on interaction. Yes.
And if I may just add, I heard someone say before that the industry had not been consulted, and you will always find a ship owner that has been asleep and not been consulted. But all these associations is actually, I mean, it depends on that ship owners are active in them and take stand. And if you are not doing that, you cannot come afterwards and say, I was not consulted, because there are pathways for us to work vis-à-vis the authorities. We have organized us in that way. That's important to say.
Thank you. I see Nicholas nodding. We're coming at the end of our panel time. I guess undoubtedly we are looking into another year of uncertainty. Claes, you mentioned before rock and roll. I'll remember that phrase. We definitely have a shift from globalization into more regional or block-based policies driven by resilience, cybersecurity, national interest. No doubt there will be challenges, and at the same time, no doubt there will also be opportunities. Shipping industry is an adaptable industry. Our shipping industry will continue to deliver the global trade effectively. Thank you to our distinguished panelists. We've covered a wide range of subjects, from decarbonization to maritime workforce to the human element. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and thank you to Capital Link for the panel.